You, I imagine, are the point person in the White House for big CEOs because you come from their world, they know you. What are you hearing from them right now?
The most excited group out there are big CEOs about our tax plan.
David, in your recent column, you said that there should be a different name for the tax bill. You proposed the name Paul Ryan's 2017 tax increase on middle-class families. Please explain. I thought it was a tax cut.
Yes, I don't think that's the name the Senate or the House is actually going to use. But there are a few reasons why it's actually a tax increase on the middle class. There are two core ones. The first is that the bill gives very little to the middle class. I mean, as you've covered, this is a bill designed to help very affluent people, getting rid of the estate tax and other things. There are very few things in it for the middle class. Many people actually end up net worse off because of losses of things like tax breaks for college interest, for adoption, for medical expenses. So something like a third of middle-class families will actually end up with a tax increase under the bill. But it's probably going to be a tax increase on the other two-thirds in the end as well, because it increases the deficit so much that ultimately the U.S. will need to pay back the deficit, and anything other than a repeal of the Trump tax plan is probably going to involve middle-class tax increases.
The minute Trump's signature is dry on this legislation, the Republicans will suddenly rediscover the deficit and insist that it's due entirely to excessive spending. Very few people even realize that in the budget resolution that provides for this $1.5 trillion tax cut, there are $4 trillion of mandatory spending cuts, and mandatory spending is just a euphemism for Medicare and Social Security, so you are exactly correct.
I mean, I would say, looking at it so far, it seems like the Senate bill is marginally less bad than the House bill. But that really shouldn't be the standard, right? It's not a question of, well, the Senate bill does less damage to the middle class than the House bill, and thus we should pass it. I mean, the Senate bill still really is a bad bill. It's designed, again, to help really wealthy taxpayers. Because it raises the deficit, there's a good chance it'll actually hurt economic growth in the long run, that any benefits to economic growth of the corporate tax cuts would be overwhelmed by the deficit. And it really has very little for middle-class families. I mean, in that same interview with John Harwood that you showed, Gary Cohn, the chief White House economics advisor, he said, number one, we have to deliver middle-class tax cuts to the hardworking families in this country. And it's just false that that is the main goal of this bill. The main goal of this bill is to deliver really big tax cuts to a small sliver of wealthy families. That's true of the House bill, and it's true of the Senate bill.
But I think it's important to understand that this is the most half-baked, slapped-together, incompetently written tax legislation in the history of the United States. What you have is a massive tax cut for the rich that is offset by a bunch of slapped-together, random tax increases that make no rhyme or reason. This is not tax reform. This is not even remotely tax reform. It's tax increases to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy.
I think this is the best summary stat. For families with children that make under $100,000, on average, their taxes go up. That's even forgetting about what it does to the deficit. So if you have kids and you make less than $100,000, your taxes are going up.